Hello and welcome to this Averys at Home video where I'm going to be talking about the Rhone Valley, one of my favourite regions. I'm going to give an overview of the geography, the layout of the region, and then we're going to split it into the north and the south, looking at the key grape varieties in each region and what the characteristics of those grape varieties bring to the wines of those sub-regions. The Rhone Valley gets its name from the river that runs through the region. And if we look at a map, we can see that in the north, the vineyard area hugs this river quite tightly. So we have very steep vineyard areas on the hillsides, on the riverbanks, and also in the valley offshoots that run east and west off the main river valley. As the valley widens, when it spreads southwards towards the Mediterranean Sea, we can see that the vineyard area also widens. Here the land gets much flatter and becomes more fertile. So therefore, the south produces a huge volume of wine. It's about 95% of the production of the Rhône, as opposed to the north, which produces only about 5% on about 4,000 hectares and is mostly premium to super premium in its price range. In the south, it's all about the blends, and we can see some fantastic wines from inexpensive right up to that premium price tag range. In the Rhone Valley, about 80% of the wine production is red. We also have some rosé, some white, and a small amount of sparkling. The Rhone Valley reds are known, especially compared to other wines from France, to have quite a robust wine style. So we're looking at the alcohol content on average being more towards 13.5, perhaps up to 15, which is considerably higher than wines from further north compared to Burgundy, for example. We also know that with higher alcohol comes a more robust body, so often these wines are quite full-bodied when we're talking about the reds, but the whites are also quite full-bodied, aromatic, as are the rosés. So there are 4 levels to the appellation system in the Rhone Valley, starting off with the Côte de Rhône AOC. AOC standing for the Appellation d'Origine Contrôlée system that exists throughout France to give wines of a geographical place a certain protection and in order to ensure quality for the consumer. About half of the Rhone Valley's wines are made in this generic Côte de Rhône AOC style, quite an easy drinking style. The minimum alcohol level has to be 11%, and you can make these wines throughout the Rhône, including the north. However, the vast majority is made in the south. Next up we have Côte de Rhône Village. The grapes for these wines have to be grown on vines that have a slightly lower yield and a slightly higher alcohol content. So therefore you get more intense characteristics from the grapes balanced out with more alcohol to create a fuller bodied wine. The grapes for these wines also tend to be from the key grape varieties in the south especially, such as Grenache, Syrah and Mourvèdre, rather than other grape varieties which are permissible in the blends as well. After this, we have the Côte de Rhône named village. There are 20 villages within the Côte de Rhône region that can put their own name on the label to demonstrate that they are of higher quality compared to other wines made in the region. For example, Rasteau and Plan du Dieu may be ones that you might have heard of. Finally, there are 17 crus, with 8 in the north and 9 in the south. They are considered to express the terroir, in essence, how the soil, the geography and the climate come together to influence how the grapes grow and develop and the resulting flavour that can be found and the structure of the wine, therefore giving it an identifiable style. So now we're going to look at the Northern Rhône in a little bit more detail. We've already seen that the vineyard area runs north to south along the Rhône River. The Rhône in the north is home to some fantastic savoury, peppery, full-bodied red wines, as well as some aromatic white wines. Now you might be more familiar with Syrah, grown in Australia where it's called Shiraz, and produces quite a jammy, fruit-forward style of wine. In the Rhône, especially in the north, the climate is much cooler. So the Syrah takes on a slightly different quality. We have a deep colour, we have a medium to high tannin, quite a full body and intense fruit with flavours of blackberry, black cherry, plum, violet, black pepper in particular, as well as herbs. The key white grape varieties in the Northern Rhône are Viognier, which is very aromatic, quite low in acidity and quite high in alcohol. It produces wines that have floral notes of honeysuckle, as well as plenty of stone fruit like peach and apricot. Therefore, it goes quite well with gently spiced Thai foods and produces wines that are very elegant but quite full-bodied and intense at the same time. Roussanne is another white grape variety grown in the northern Rhône, and it adds acidity and perfume to a blend. So think pear, apricot, lemon, and a little bit of green herbs. It's quite tricky to grow, however, so it's not as widely planted, therefore it's not as well known. But if you do spot a Roussanne, and they are made as a single varietal, so 100% Roussanne, goes really well with meatier white fish or something like mussels in a creamy sauce. Marsanne is the other star of the northern Rhône, producing white wines that are much more oily. They have quite a texture, they're more full-bodied, and they're again quite aromatic. So there's a certain weight to them, and their flavours are similar. So you've got honeysuckle again, as well as stone fruit, so more apricot and peach. You can also get some almond, which develops into hazelnut as the wines age, because Marsanne does age quite nicely. The 8 crus of the northern Rhône are geographically north to south, starting with Côte Rôtie. Côte Rôtie translates to burnt or roasted slope, which is a hint to the way the vines are grown here. Very steep slopes, south-facing, very exposed to the sun. Moving south, we have Condrieu, which is a white-only appellation with the Viognier grape. Manages to produce wines that are reasonably intense, yet also quite elegant. And although they don't age quite well because Viognier has a low acidity, they are wines that demand, again, quite a premium price tag, and this is in part due to the surge in popularity that we've seen for the Viognier grape and particular wines of Condrieu. Within Condrieu, we also have an appellation which is quite unusual in that it's only owned by one winery. So this is Chateau Grillet. Very, very small landholding. They are able to produce wines in a natural amphitheatre that somehow enable the Viognier grape to age, and they're slightly more austere wines because of that. Saint Joseph is next, being one of the larger crus of the northern Rhône. It produces a good quality wine up to that premium price tag as well, so it's a really good entry point into the northern Rhône if you're looking to explore. There can be varying degrees of quality, so it's worth doing your homework before you go out and purchase one. A lot of the vineyards in this area are owned by cooperatives, so you'll see some familiar names operating throughout the whole of the Rhône and especially throughout the different crus of the northern Rhône. Towards the bottom of Saint Joseph, we have Crozes Hermitage, where the vineyard area does spread slightly eastwards, and the best wines from this region, because quality can vary slightly, are from the north, the steeper slopes, with slightly lighter wines made in terms of the Rhône from the more southerly vineyard areas. And within Crozes, we also have Hermitage itself, which is a tiny appellation and has grapes grown predominantly just on one hillside, so a south-facing slope that makes quite robust, full-bodied red wines, some of the most full-bodied, most intense wines of the northern Rhône. Up next is Cornas, so being the furthest south, it's also the warmest producer of red wines, 100% Syrah here. It's a powerful style, slightly riper fruit because of the extra warmth, and lots of small producers here. Underneath this we have Saint-Péray, which is a less well-known region, more famous for producing some white wines from grapes like Marsanne and Roussanne, as well as some sparkling wine, which I have here. The Marsanne Domaine de Tonnelle by Stéphane Robert. So this is 100% Marsanne. Stéphane Robert is a producer that goes around the Rhône Valley, predominantly in the north, spread across different crus, places like Condrieu, Saint Joseph, Cornas as well. This wine in particular has seen no oak, so we're expecting it to be really full-bodied, aromatic and rich with plenty of honeysuckle. It's a great alternative for people who love Chardonnay, who want that robust, mouth-filling wine with lots and lots of texture. And therefore it is very food-friendly. It pairs incredibly well with something like spatchcock chicken or a butternut squash risotto, for example. Now we're going to talk about the wines of the southern Rhône. The climate here is warmer as we're getting closer to that Mediterranean Sea as well. The south of the Rhône is all about blends. We've already mentioned the grape varieties Grenache, Syrah and Mourvèdre to create that GSM blend that is so famous. So when we talk about the grape varieties in the south, it's more about identifying the role that they play within that blend. Starting with Grenache, which is the dominant grape of the south. It's got a high alcohol, it's got low acidity, and it's got a low to medium tannin as well. It's got quite concentrated ripe red fruit, so think red cherry, strawberry, red plum, and it's also got a spicy and herbal characteristic to it. Mourvèdre is a grape variety that's quite high in tannin, so deep colour, full body. It gives flavours of blackberry, bramble, black pepper, blueberry, violet. Syrah in the south adds structure to a blend. Think of the tannin as well as the intense fruit concentration and those flavours of black pepper and some black fruit to complement the red fruit of Grenache. And we also have Cinsault in the south, which is predominantly blended in to make a rosé. We've already established that a lot of the wine produced in the Rhône Valley as a whole comes from the south and from that generic Côte de Rhône AOC. After that we have the Côte de Rhône village and then the Côte de Rhône named village. After this we have the cru. Now most of these cru did start off as a named village before they got given that higher quality status. Châteauneuf-du-Pape is often the first thing that people think of when they think of the Rhône Valley and its wines. It's one of the 9 crus of the south and by far the most famous. It's actually got quite a significant place in terms of the French appellation system as well, being the first one to get that title as defined by the French law. There are actually 13 different grape varieties permitted in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, and you can include them all in a blend. However, the highest quality wines and the vast majority are dominated by that Grenache grape variety, with some of them being 100% Grenache. The other crus of the southern Rhône include Tavel, which makes 100% rosé, which is quite unusual, full-bodied style of rosé, quite deep in colour but very dry. We also have Lirac, which is in the shadow of Châteauneuf-du-Pape but produces wines in very much the same style, and if you're a fan of Châteauneuf, it's definitely one to search for on the shelves. We also have Gigondas, Vaccarat, Vin Sobre, Rasteau, Baume de Venise, as well as Cairan, which is the most recently promoted in 2015, still offering incredible value compared perhaps to some of the other crus. As I've mentioned, I'm a huge fan of wines from the Rhône Valley. One of my favourite producers is Domaine de Morchon. So what I have here is their Côte de Rhône from Séguret, so it's a named village, and the Morchon winery have really put this village on the map. It's quite recently promoted in terms of France, and what we have here should be a fantastically well-balanced wine made from those Grenache, Syrah, Mourvèdre grape varieties with all those intense characteristics typical of a southern Rhône blend. It's really meaty, so it's still got a nice bit of acidity, really well balanced. The flavours quite pronounced and it's got a good bit of texture to it, so it's got some structure, a bit of tannin from that Syrah, the alcohol from the Grenache and slightly darker fruits from the Mourvèdre. That concludes the whistle-stop tour of what Rhône has to offer from north to south. I hope you've got a few pointers for when you're next choosing a wine to drink from the Rhône and if you're enjoying that wine and trying to spot those key characteristics we've mentioned, the peppery, savoury reds, quite robust, and the aromatic white wines that can be quite rich, as well as the medium-bodied rosés that are dry but fully flavoured. The Rhône has so much to offer and there are a variety of price points. I do encourage you to explore, and as always, if you've got any questions, do email me on events@averys.com.